Cyber Shadow is an action platformer that was developed by Mechanical Head Studios, who are actually a one-man team, a man by the name of Arne Hunziker. Publishing rights were picked up by Yacht Club Games, known for the excellent Shovel Knight, and it has just released on the Nintendo Switch. Is it more cybernetic or cyber-pathetic? I'm Glen Bolger, thank you to the publishing team for the review code, and now let's find out. The story revolves around the fall of a ninja clan whose bodies are being harvested for their power by the synthetic life forms that are now in charge of Mecha City. You play as a cyborg and one-time member of the clan in an attempt to rescue your friends. The story is told via cutscenes reminiscent of those found in the NES version of Ninja Gaiden, as well as via conversations between characters. Cyber Shadow is an action platformer. You will be making your way across levels, killing enemies, dodging projectiles whilst traversing platforms and attempting to avoid the many pitfalls that await you should you put a foot wrong. Inspiration has clearly been taken from some classic games from this particular genre, with the aforementioned Ninja Gaiden being the most noticeable, not just in terms of the subject matter, but also in regard to the fluidity and speed at which you will make your way through levels. There are definitely aspects that will remind you of other NES classics though, such as the Mega Man games, Shatterhand, Shadow of the Ninja, and Sunsoft's Batman, to name a few. First and foremost, it must be said that it does a fantastic job of getting this feeling right. It's incredibly hard at times, enemies will overwhelm you, and the screen will be full of projectiles. It will feel as if there isn't a pixel space on the screen where you can stand and be safe, but through practice and sheer persistence, you will begin to learn enemy patterns and know when to strike or where to stand. You will die often, but thankfully checkpoint placement is fair, never asking too much of you in terms of when the next one will be, but also asking just enough of you to ensure that you are earning your progress. As you play, you will gain orbs from crates or defeated enemies, and these can be used to power up certain checkpoints, usually the ones stationed just before a boss battle. By doing this, you can ensure that should you die, you will have, say, a full health bar for example, or the best available weapon the next time that you try. The boss battles themselves are a real highlight of the game. They are proper throwbacks to old school gaming with bigger health bars and more powerful weapons than you, meaning that you will need to be completely on point if you want to win. Again, pattern memorization and sensible placement are key in these battles, and some genuinely feel impossible at first as you do minuscule damage before perishing, but each attempt brings you that bit closer or will trigger a light bulb moment in terms of a new tactic you can try, and the sense of satisfaction when they are finally defeated is immense. You begin by just being able to jump and have a basic sword slash move, although you will earn new abilities and weapons as you play. These range from moves that must be performed, such as a flame attack, and these use up your spirit points, to more passive abilities allowing you to wall slide or double jump. The introduction of such passive abilities begins to see levels become a little more expansive, moving away from simply going from one side of the stage to the other and starting to have you needing to activate a couple of locks in order to open a door or traversing vertical areas. Sometimes you may even need to defeat a boss, then go back the way you came to enter a previously inaccessible area. It's still very linear, never calling for a map or anything like that, and goes nowhere near Metroidvania territory, but it was nice to have this small evolution to the gameplay to show our protagonist's ever-widening search for justice. Victory against mini-bosses will earn you extra hit or spirit points, extending your life or spirit bar, and certain containers are also hidden within levels, and grabbing 3 of these is another way to earn yourself an extension to that life bar. Moving on to a couple more negative points, and in its quest to pay homage to the aforementioned classics of the NES era, it does include a few gameplay quirks that were staples of the time. The first is the knockback animation whenever you get hit, something witnessed in the Ninja Gaiden and early Castlevania games. Taking a hit will see your character knocked back a small distance, which means any hit taken whilst attempting a jump or near an edge almost always results in death. It's one of the features that we endured during those days, and some may argue it authenticates the game as a genuine homage of the time. Personally, I would have been more than happy for it to stay firmly in the late 1980s. This method of recreating a new 8-bit game, warts and all, doesn't just extend to gameplay quirks though, with the limitations of an 8-bit system's control pad in terms of available buttons also represented here. Only 2 buttons are used, although R is used to sprint so it's technically free, but it's B to jump and Y to attack, with every other special attack you receive throughout the game then attributed to pressing a direction on the D-pad in conjunction with Y. This philosophy has just never made sense to me. Modern interpretations of classic games are at their best when they do things that technical limitations prevented back then, whilst emphasising the core features of pick up and play fun. One final complaint then about the controls, and this relates to the downward strike you learn a little way into the game. Again, it's assigned to Y and a D-pad direction, this time down, and sees you now able to destroy otherwise unbreakable floors, for example, but it can also be used to effectively bounce off enemies and across pitfalls, Scrooge McDuck style. The problem is that having to press Y as well as pressing down really throws your timing off, especially when bouncing across multiple enemies, and why they didn't assign this to just pressing down is a mystery to me. The control of the character in terms of how responsive they are is excellent, so it's a shame that the actual control scheme adopted is just a bit off. Whilst you can remap buttons, you seemingly cannot change the moves that use the button and D-pad combination. I do also feel a crouch move was needed just to give you the appropriate range in order to hit certain enemies, especially those with quite erratic movement patterns. Gameplay is very challenging, but the fluid nature of the platforming and the fast and satisfying combat will see you happily keep trying, and it scores 18 out of 20. Controls in terms of the responsiveness of your character are spot on, but there are a few odd design choices that hurt the experience a tad, and they score 15 out of 20. Now, I mentioned earlier that such games are at their best when modern techniques are used to do things that wouldn't have been possible back then, but in that same classic style, and the visuals most certainly follow that trail of thought. A quick glance at the main character sprite or the colour palette could well have you thinking of a game from the later years of the NES or Master System's life, but closer inspection shows those detailed backgrounds, making great use of parallax scrolling and revealing a world that stretches far into the distance. The intricacies of the colour palette also become clear. Whilst its range of colour is limited as per that desired retro style, the use of shades of each colour and the vibrancy that certain yellows, oranges and pinks bring to the typical blue or black backgrounds does look particularly striking. You also have the option to add a CRT filter effect should you wish via the options menu, accessed by pressing the minus button. In terms of the audio, you have a quite sublime soundtrack which was composed by Enrique Martin and produced by Jake Kaufman. It does a fantastic job of setting the mood and feel for each part of the game. I was fully expecting fast-paced chiptune that gets the blood pumping, and something to that effect is most certainly used a lot of the time. But the calmer, more melancholic tunes with that rich synth running through them were a big surprise and very much appreciated. Ever since playing The Last Ninja 2 back in the day, a ninja game doesn't quite feel complete without synth, so hearing it certainly brought a smile to my face. But they were also not afraid to completely change things up at times. This boss battle here wouldn't have looked out of place with one of the aforementioned high-octane tracks blasting out, but instead it uses quite a haunting piece that almost belies the retro feel the rest of the game goes for. It caught me off guard for a moment, but it's great and really helps to raise the stakes. Visuals recreate a style of old whilst employing techniques that were not possible on original hardware, and they score 17 out of 20. Audio does something similar but juxtaposes this with some modern tracks, and it all sounds fantastic. It scores 19 out of 20. Cyber Shadow costs £17.99 and regional equivalents are on your screen now, and it will take up 326 megabytes of your system storage. For this price you are getting a game with 11 pretty long levels. I like how the difficulty isn't used to mask a short experience and is instead a part of the game's makeup. It will take most people around 8 to 10 hours on a first playthrough, although skilled players may finish it a fair bit quicker. To add some longevity, there are a number of in-game achievements known as feats, so completionists can aim for those too. Value gets 15 out of 20. To conclude, Cyber Shadow is a fantastic action platformer that gets its mix of precision jumping and fast-paced combat just right. Your timings will need to be spot on, as will your reaction times and ability to learn enemy patterns, but even then you will still no doubt die countless times. The mark of a good game though is you'll know why you died, know it was your fault, and will be eager to rectify this in the next go. You'll need to be up for a challenge, as you'll certainly be presented with one, but it's as fair as it is tough, and I highly recommend it. Cyber Shadow gets a SwitchUp score of 84%. Thank you everybody for watching this review. I hope you enjoyed it. Please do remember to leave a like if you did. A quick thank you to our Patreons as always for your continued support, and to each and every one of you for watching our videos. Take care, stay safe of course, and until next time, happy gaming.